Welcome back. All right, so the career video for today is on Kevin Lowe. Kevin Lowe, who played with the Edmonton Oilers and then played with the Rangers, won a bunch of championships, is in the Hall of Fame. But what's interesting is the book that I use for the career videos, and I make sure that I put information from here in the video if necessary, is this book here. So because I get asked, and this is available on eBay. I think they still have it on Amazon as well. It was printed in, I think it's 2002. Chris Cuthbert wrote in it as well. So I think it's 2002. I'll just double check here. Because now it's to the point where it's kind of driving me nuts. 2003. Came out in 2003. So is it 20 years old? Yes. Does it still have a bunch of information on players that I want to talk about? Absolutely. And it says in that book that if he's not a Hall of Famer, he's pretty damn close. And that's been an argument since he retired. That was an argument late in his career as well. Is he a Hall of Famer? Now, he's drafted 21st overall in 1979 by the Oilers as they're coming into the National Hockey League from the WHA. That was a great draft for the Oilers. The Oilers drafting was fantastic as they came into the league that first few years. And in his first year, 79-80, plays 64 games with the Oilers, 2 goals, 19 assists, 21 points. In the playoffs, 1 assist in 3 games. So, he has the unenviable task of trying to keep the puck from going in their net. Also of covering while Paul Coffey does the roving thing as he does so well. Paul Coffey's defensive style was very similar to what Erik Karlsson employs now. A lot of points, but defensively there are some issues, so you have to have somebody who can cover for him. And that was Kevin Lowe's job. Except that Kevin Lowe kind of had to cover for almost everybody. The Oilers were a run-and-gun team, the highest scoring team ever. So 80-81, 79 games played. 10 goals, 24 assists, 34 points. In the playoffs, 9 games, 2 assists. This was where Edmonton started showing that maybe their game would work in the playoffs. But again, the question then gets asked of, so can a team that doesn't really play defense win a Stanley Cup? To which Kevin Lowe would have responded with, I play defense. 81-82, 80 games played, 9 goals, 31 assists, 40 points. He put up good point totals as well. In the playoffs, 3 assists in 5 games, and he's 10th in Norris voting that year. So he got some consideration for Norris, wasn't a favorite. So the argument we've had over forever about which defenseman should be considered for Norris would have applied back then. I think advanced stats people would have loved Kevin Lowe at that stage. I don't have the numbers on that because we didn't really have that back then. In 82-83, 80 games played again, 6 goals, 34 assists, 40 points. In the playoffs, the Oilers go all the way to the final. 16 games, 1 goal, 8 assists, 9 points. But they get annihilated by the Islanders in the final. And so it was seen as, okay, all right, the Oilers got to the final, but they're not going to win that Stanley Cup until they learn how to play defense. The reality is the Oilers played against the Islanders and came out of that series saying, so we've got to improve a bit and we've got to tweak our game. And so 83-84, an Oilers team that's on a mission, Kevin Lowe a part of it. 80 games played, 4 goals, 42 assists, 46 points. In the playoffs, 19 games, 3 goals, 7 assists, 10 points. Played in his first All-Star game that year, so he's starting to get recognition, and he won the Stanley Cup. That's a good recognition right there. And so the Islanders dynasty went 4 straight Stanley Cups. Now it's time for the Oilers dynasty after the Islanders dynasty. So 84-85, 80 games played, 4 goals, 21 assists, 25 points. So his points drop off, but the points aren't part of his game. Not as much as it is for other players during this era. In the playoffs, 16 games, 5 assists. They win the Stanley Cup again. He's in the All-Star game again, and he's 7th in Norris voting. I've noticed, too, with Norris voting, that it can lag behind. I don't know that happens as much now as it did back then. But it felt like defensemen got recognized later than they should have. And that him getting 7th in Norris, it just seems odd because he was just as good the year before, at least in my eyes. 85-86, 74 games, 2 goals, 16 assists, 18 points. In the playoffs, 10 games, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. He's in the All-Star game again, 3 years in a row. During an era where defensive defensemen, like it would be like Jacob Slavin going to the All-Star game every year for Carolina. And it basically, it could be a couple things too. So you have a 21-team league. You have a Stanley Cup champion in Edmonton that is Also the most popular team in the league. There was Oilers gear everywhere in the 80s. And so, yeah, maybe that helps get him in the All-Star game as well. But his play was excellent. 86-87, his numbers come back up. 77 games, 8 goals, 29 assists, 37 points. In the playoffs, 21 games, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. And another Stanley Cup. So that's 3 Stanley Cups in 4 years. That makes them a dynasty right there. But they're not done. 87-88, 70 games played, 9 goals, 15 assists, 24 points. In the playoffs, 19 games, just the 2 assists, but he plays in the All-Star game again. Stanley Cup winner, and he's 5th in Norris voting. That's as close as he would get to the Norris Trophy. And in the 88 playoffs, Wayne Gretzky revealed after he had played with broken ribs throughout, and that he had been, kind of hiding it and guarding it throughout those playoffs. So we've talked before about how banged up players can be and injuries they play through. Yeah, Kevin Lowe was definitely one of those players. Absolute warrior. 88-89, 76 games played, 7 goals, 18 assists, 25 points. In the playoffs, 7 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points. Plays in the All-Star game. He was 8th in Norris voting. So that's the last time he's top 10 in Norris voting. But again, the fact that he's in the top 10 at all is really saying something. 89-90, 78 games, 7 goals, 26 assists, 33 points. In the playoffs, 20 games played, just the 2 assists. But it's an All-Star game, and it's a Stanley Cup that people really didn't see coming. This was an Oilers team that 2 years prior had lost Wayne Gretzky to LA, and they weren't fantastic during the 89-90 season and the regular season, but they ended up winning the Stanley Cup. Bill Ranford was fantastic during that run, and then after the Stanley Cup is done and all that, Kevin Lowe ends up winning the King Clancy Award. So, humanitarian work, yep. Leadership, yep, he's got that too. So, Kevin Lowe, really well regarded at this point. 90-91, as the Oilers are dropping off, like they're not the same team. They've won 5 cups in 7 years, but 73 games played that year, 3 goals, 13 assists, 16 points. In the playoffs, 14 games, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points. This is an era where the Oilers are now dealing with losing a lot of their star power, because they just couldn't pay them. They couldn't give them the money that other locations could. So L.A. and New York became popular destinations, as well as Detroit, Toronto, places like that. His final season in Edmonton, he actually becomes the captain. 55 games, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points. In the playoffs, 11 games, 3 assists. So 91-92 is done. They go all the way to the conference final. They're not able to get past the conference final. So we get to 92-93, and on December 11th of 1992, he is traded to the New York Rangers before he's made his season debut for a 3rd-round pick in 1993, and Roman Aksuda, he is traded to the New York Rangers. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say the Oilers probably didn't get enough for that. That 1993 3rd-round pick did not become a player that I felt like I needed to put the name of up there, because it'd be a lot of who. And so, yeah, they didn't get enough back. He plays 49 games for the Rangers, 3 goals, 12 assists, 15 points, and he still makes an appearance in the All-Star game. So, really, this is a year that's important now. Lowe is in New York with all of his guys. Kevin Lowe was one of the last from the Dynasty to say, yeah, I'm gone. And honestly, I don't think his heart ever left Edmonton, although he gave everything he had to the Rangers while he was there. So 93-94, 71 games played in New York, 5 goals, 14 assists, 19 points. In the playoffs, plays 22 games, just records 1 goal, no assists, but he wins the Stanley Cup. So 1940 chance or no more when it comes to the New York Rangers, and Kevin Lowe played a part in that. Defensive defenseman, playing more of a depth role maybe than he had in Edmonton before that, but a Stanley Cup's a Stanley Cup. That's his 6th Stanley Cup ring. And so when people talk about why he's in the Hall, I think those 6 Stanley Cup rings are valid. They took the Edmonton show east, and it worked. There were definitely a lot of players on that team as well that were New York Rangers, like Leach and like Richter. There were some very good players there, but definitely adding all those Oilers helped. 94-95, he plays 44 games, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points. In the playoffs, 10 games played, 1 assist. The one thing with the Rangers was that they got that Stanley Cup in 94, and then the obsession was getting that Stanley Cup again. And so they would make deadline deals with that in mind. And other former Oilers were brought in, some were traded out, and it became the law of diminishing returns. It just became less and less successful each time. 95-96, what would be his final season with the Rangers? 53 games, 1 goal, 5 assists, 6 points. In the playoffs, 10 games played, and 4 assists recorded. So he goes to market. Where is he going to sign? Well, September 28th, he signs with the Oilers because that's where he belongs. 64 games in Edmonton in 96-97, 1 goal, 13 assists, 14 points. He only appeared in 1 playoff game that spring. 97-98, he only played 7 regular season games that year. In the playoffs, he added 1 game there, but that would be a quiet end to his career. Part of an Oilers team there that by the time you get to the late 90s, they were now an underdog that was to be feared on some level. I say that as a Dallas fan. But he retires with 1,254 games played, which is 96th in the all-time list. 84 goals, 347 assists, 431 points. In the playoffs, a ridiculous 214 games played. That's a lot for playoffs. 10 goals, 48 assists, 58 points. So he did get inducted into the Hall of Fame a couple years back in 2020. February 26th of 2021, he was named to the Order of Hockey in Canada by Hockey Canada. So I would think largely a ceremonial title, but still kind of nice to have anyways. 1982, he won bronze at the World Championship. He didn't play in very many World Championships because his team was always playing late in the playoffs. The World Championships are early in the playoffs, and so it's a sign that Kevin Lowe was on some pretty good teams. 1984, he won gold at the Canada Cup. So for Kevin Lowe, it was a career that lasted a long time, almost a full 20 years. 6 Stanley Cup rings. No, he didn't win a Norris. But we could go through a lot of defensemen currently in the National Hockey League who may not have won a Norris, but we could make an argument probably belong in the Hall of Fame. Or maybe who won 1 Norris in one really glorious season who maybe don't belong in the Hall of Fame. So that's a discussion for another time. But hey, let me know your thoughts in the comments section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.